Do you want to know why you feel stuck and like you can't leave your abusive relationship? It could be a trauma bond, so let's talk about the science behind that. A trauma bond is primarily influenced by 3 psychological factors. Number 1, intermittent reinforcement. The abuser alternates between moments of kindness or just relief from distress and abuse and devaluation. This creates a sense of unpredictability and it strengthens the bond between the abuser and the victim. Number 2, survival instincts. The human brain activates survival mechanisms that can lead to attachment, even to a person causing you harm. This survival response is rooted in the need for safety and protection. The third one is the phenomenon called Stockholm Syndrome. It occurs when a victim develops positive feelings or attachment to their captor or to their abuser. But this is a subconscious survival strategy, and it makes it really difficult for the victim to detach from the abuser. A trauma bond, which is a term coined by Dr. Patrick Carnes, is an emotional attachment that exists in a relationship where there's a mix of positive reinforcement mixed with abuse. They are incredibly difficult to break, and there's a few reasons why. The first is cognitive dissonance. That's the mental discomfort that you're experiencing from holding 2 different and conflicting beliefs. They are good, they are bad. They are the knife, they are the band-aid. The second is fear and dependency. Trauma bonds often generate a strong sense of fear and learned helplessness in the victim. The abuser will manipulate your emotions, isolate you from friends and family. They create a fundamental sense of unworthiness. This leads to an increased reliance on the abuser. Number 3, the emotional investment. Over time, victims invest significant emotional energy in the relationship. It's incredibly difficult to just decide to cut your losses and leave. First, you have to sever the emotional ties, and that is immensely challenging. And number 4, the cycle of idealization and devaluation. It's a cyclical pattern. The intermittent positive reinforcement of experiences followed by the abuse or neglect, it creates a sense of hope that the relationship can change. And all the while, the abuser is future faking and promising improvement. This leads to increased resistance to actually break the bond and move on. So breaking the trauma bond requires a combination of several things. The first is self-awareness, education, and clarity. The second is figuring out what got you here, and not from a place of judgment, but just understanding. You're not to blame for the abuse inflicted on you. You need to address your underlying trauma. And lastly, you need to build a future and self-esteem. I hosted a webinar called The Science Behind a Trauma Bond, and on the panel was 4 licensed mental health professionals. Listen to them break down the science behind this phenomenon and teach you to take the steps to break yours. You can also register for the self-paced program called the Trauma Bond Recovery Course.